Hello and welcome to Top Story. The wheels of justice in Cambodia may grind slowly, but they're catching up on some of the key leaders in the Khmer Rouge, the radical communist regime that subjected Cambodia to 4 years of savagery and mass killings between 1975 and 1979. Police on Monday arrested Khieu Samphan, the Khmer Rouge's former head of state. He's the fifth and last of the top leaders targeted by Cambodia's UN-backed genocide court. The elderly former guerrilla fighter was taken from his hospital bed to face trial. It's estimated that around 1 million people died of starvation and exhaustion under the Khmer Rouge, and that hundreds of thousands more were executed or tortured to death. The Maoist regime exterminated the middle class, emptied the country's cities, abolished money, religion and schools, and sought to create an egalitarian utopia with its roots in the Cambodian countryside. The first of the five to face his accusers is Duch, the former head of a notorious prison. His trial begins today. Well, joining me now to discuss the arrest and the importance for Cambodia of the Genocide Tribunal is Christine Chomeau, a specialist on Southeast Asia at Korea International, who's also the author of a book on the Khmer Rouge. Thanks very much for being with us on Top Story. This International Genocide Tribunal is holding its first public hearing today. How important are the five people who are being put on trial?
They are fairly important because since Pol Pot died in 1998, all those five characters are the main leaders after Pol Pot, who were in charge of the regime. The second in charge, Nuon Chea, was arrested in September this year and is seen as the ideologue of the regime. So he will be able to probably tell the judges how the Khmer Rouge conceived their regime and why it led to so many massacres.
Just how terrible were those years in Cambodia, and what sort of a mark have they left on the countryside, but also on the generation that survived them?
One needs to remember that Cambodia had been at civil war since 1970, so 5 years before the Khmer Rouge took power. So this period of civil war between 1970 and 1975 were already very traumatizing and very harsh because they were huge bombing by the US at the time. One needs to know that Cambodia was more bombed than Germany during Second World War. But when the Khmer Rouge took power in 1975 up until 1979, they led a very extremist Maoist, nationalist Maoist regime in which they asked all the people living in the city to go and live in the countryside. So only
it's a
that
huge upheaval, in other words.
Yeah, imagine 2 million people like emptying Paris of all its inhabitants in just a few hours, and not only the valid one, but also people in the hospital, the elderly, the youngs. I mean, everyone in all the city of Cambodia were asked to go to the countryside. And imagine anyone who has not been able, who don't know how to survive in a countryside. In a place where one needs to grow its own rice to live.
And something like 1.5 billion people killed in that 4 years. It's almost unbelievable.
It's 1/4 of the world population. So it's really Cambodia year zero, as it was told. 1975, it was back to zero.
How important are these trials then for ordinary Cambodian people? How much support is there in Cambodia for the trials?
It's quite mixed. For a long period of time, ordinary Cambodians did not believe those trials would take place because it was a very, very long time before international justice or a form of justice was discussed by the government and by the UN. So to start with, people just say, oh, it won't happen. But now that the main leaders has been arrested and are about to be prosecuted, I think there will be more interest and there will be probably more people starting to file complaints, because that was also one of the issues. I mean, the trial has been set up only for 1 year, and there have been just not that many complaints filed with the trial.
Well, why has it taken so long? Over more 30 years now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long. It's because of all the Cold War. I mean, Cambodia was taken, I mean, as a pawn in the big game of, because after the Khmer Rouge fall in 1979, the Vietnamese, I mean, invaded Cambodia and got rid of the Khmer Rouge regime. But because it was the Vietnamese who, I mean, at the time were arch enemy of the US, the US decided not to recognize the new government of Cambodia. And instead of they supported, in a way, the Khmer Rouge, who retreated to the border between Cambodia and Thailand. And all during the 80s, the Western were aligned, in a sense, with the Khmer Rouge. I mean, during those years, the Khmer Rouge were received in New York at the UN main building, and they were received as representative of the population that they had killed and massacred. So it's all that period of the Cold War that ended in 89, 90, when peace talks were put together.
What about these 5 people who are being put on trial? Do they accept their guilt? Do they recognize that there were crimes committed by the Khmer Rouge?
No, only one of them recognized and said, yeah, I mean, the Duke, who is on trial today, I mean, not on trial, but who is...
he was the man who's in charge of the notorious prison. Duke,
exactly.
yeah.
He was director of the prison in which 17,000 people were killed. And he's the only one who say, yeah, I was given order to do so and so. And not only I was given order, but I was directing the torturing and all that. But except for him, all the others are just saying, no, we were just trying to prevent our country from being invaded from all different sides, and we were just trying to, we were at war basically with our neighbors, especially with the Vietnamese, after a certain period of time. So they just don't recognize that they were leading a politics of massacre.
And okay, on that point, we're going to have to end it, I'm afraid. Thanks to Christine Schumo of Korea International. Join us again tomorrow for another edition of Top Story. Goodbye.